Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. I originally thought about doing this video as a Feedback Friday, but I think there's other stuff to cover in Feedback Friday, and this is going to be a longer one on its own. But I think it's instructive. I would ask that before anyone gets triggered again, please listen to what I say. Please listen to the context I say it in. Do not add or subtract via assumption to my words. Because I think that's been the problem over the last few days. People got duped by a very canny manipulator in Hasan Piker. And through no fault of their own, they were convinced to believe his version of things, not the unadulterated truth of what is in the original version of that video. Now, obviously, this is risking demonetization. I'm taking a lot of shit for this. So if you are interested in these sorts of dialogues, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. I know that's a shill, but this is a business. I've got to do it. This is what I do. So where do we begin here? I've spent 4 days being told by various people on pretty much every social media platform in existence that I am not only a racist, but I am a femcel, which is a woman who is really angry that she's not married against her choice, which is weird because I actually am married. I am someone that makes someone question why school shooters are predominantly men. I am someone who, why this is relevant, even if it were true, I'm not sure, but it's not, that I met my husband when I was 17. Yeah, I take exception to the implication there, which I'm not even going to say, but the people who did that, not cool. Like, the problem I have with all of this trolling from Hasan Piker. Sorry, I'm dealing with different pronunciations of names I'm familiar with. His followers and a whole bunch of trolls who are just camping on what he does for shits and giggles. You are making light of some very serious social ills. And in light of what the actual topic is here, that's profoundly hypocritical. Now, trolls, I don't blame. Trolls gonna troll. Like, somebody comes at me with a Peppy the Frog icon on their Twitter account that's like only a few months old. Gee, mute or block. Done. There's no point in engaging with that person. They're being completely honest about what they are, right? There's an odd sort of, I won't say nobility, but at least like authenticity to that. They're an authentic troll. Weird. But I do feel for the people that Hasan Piker manipulated with his stunt. And I've talked to people. I've spent hours and hours and hours and hours being repeatedly called a racist and a dumbass and worse, to understand sort of what's going on here. And what is going on here is a so-called lefty, an economic lefty, using the same tactics that extreme right-wing figures are criticized for using, which is using propagandist framing tactics to present a piece of video seemingly in its entirety, but it's been doctored. First and foremost, he sped up the video to make me seem more manic, raised the pitch of my voice subtly, all things that made me seem more emotional in that video than I actually was. More out of control, more triggered, more close to tears. None of that's true. But people also were convinced, despite video evidence to the contrary, that I said things I did not say. And that was because of Hasan Piker's manipulations. And that's wrong. Like, you do not get to call yourself a progressive and manipulate vulnerable, traumatized people in that way. I don't blame the people that got the opinion of me from that video. I blame him. What he did was dirty. What he did was unethical. And the part of the reason it's so sleazy is because it works. It's effective. So, you know, I'm being dispassionate. I'm being detached enough to put the blame on somewhere fair. The people that fell for his garbage, not your fault. You know, I don't blame you. I'm not angry at you. I don't hate you. I had to block some of you. I had to mute some of you because you just wouldn't stop. But you know, it's nothing personal. I do find making light of school shootings, making light of statutory rape, making light of the ongoing racial divisions in America, and implying that, not even implying, flat out suggesting that I made up the friends I was referring to. What is wrong with a person who thinks that way? Like, I would not even consider that when I was analyzing a piece of video. That's one of those things that we have to consider, that because he went there, perhaps he's done that himself. Perhaps he's just made up a fictional friend to say what he's really thinking through a beneficial identity politics manipulation tactic. I wasn't doing that for obvious reasons. I'm not going to give the identity of the friends I was talking about. I grew up in a majority black neighborhood, so I had many friends of various races, and I do to today. Now, this does not mean, as some people insisted, that I think I understand what it means to be black. I don't. I never claimed to. The issues I had with the Mortal Kombat ending were completely about greater philosophical concepts of free will and nothing to do with race. My fundamental problem is you do not free one people by enslaving all people. And when one person is going back and repeatedly changing the timeline to make things better for everyone, you are robbing all of humanity of free will. Which means, in this hypothetical Mortal Kombat ending, Jax didn't free anyone. He enslaved everyone by making everyone bend to his idea of better for everyone. And a lot of people just, he made things better for everyone. Can't you read? He made things better for everyone. Didn't you watch the ending? Yeah, I did. The thing is, better for everyone is impossible. And this is the thing that people who called me a racist and a bunch of other names and stupid and a dumbass and this, that, and Wex thing and a white capitalist feminist, whatever that means, you know, this is the thing they didn't get. That I have been doing LGBTQ plus advocacy since I was 15 years old. When I was 6-year-old, a friend of mine died in a terrorist attack. I'm not going to get into the details there. I've talked about it before. Those things and many other things have taught me that better for everyone is not something that there is consensus on now, nor will there ever be. And this is why minority rights are so important. A balance between personal freedom and, equality and access to opportunity it's a balancing act. We're never going to have a perfect world. People are going to do bad things. And, one guy going back and deciding for everyone what better is, there are just certain binaries that he's going to have to come down on one side or the other, and that robs people of free will. Is gay marriage better for everyone? I think it is. Plenty of people disagree. Is, legalized and subsidized abortion options better for everyone? I believe it is, though I would never have an abortion myself. I believe it is. Because of the right to choose. Because I can't make that choice for another person. And my own personal belief is that, my religion says that a fetus is mere water and is part of a mother's body until the head leaves the body. That's what Judaism teaches. And babies aren't even named until they're 8 days old because, infant mortality was so high back in the day. So it is not across the board. Every religion believes abortion is a mortal sin. Abortion is murder. There's no consensus on that. If it's better for everyone, Jax is going to have to make a call on that, right? Are trans people given the right to identify as the gender of their choice? Are gender non-conforming people able to use bespoke pronouns or a non-gendered pronoun? This is a very divisive issue. Some people would say, no, you're just encouraging a mental illness. You're not helping them. You're feeding into their delusion. I am not one of those people. I believe that gender dysphoria is an endocrine thing, not a psychological thing. I think the chemicals in a person's body are not lining up with their anatomy. That's my working theory. But am I right? Well, the jury's out. So what's better for everybody? No single person can determine what is better for everyone. And that's why we have to give maximum freedoms for people. Now, allowing people to be free is messy. The very nature of freedom means you have to give up a certain amount of security for freedom. And that means people are going to do bad things. People are going to hurt other people. And some people believe that that is not worth the cost. The freedom is not worth that. That's their choice. I disagree. I think that within reason, people should be free to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, whatever that may be. Their freedoms end where another person's begins. I don't understand people who need 45 guns, but I accept that in America, the Second Amendment is a thing. It's enshrined. And this is why I would never go back and change history. I might be tempted to remove the Second Amendment. That's wrong. That's a totally emotional impulse on my part. I don't get the right to make that decision for billions of people. As is, going back and completely creating a butterfly effect, wiping people out of existence, which multiple endings in Mortal Kombat 11 dictate happens. One person does not get the right to choose for everyone else what better is. That is a consensus that must be determined based on elected representation, representative democracy. That's why it's there. Because if one guy's making all those choices, that's tyranny. That's an autocrat. We are not free if one person is controlling the world. If you do something that he considers bad enough, he just wipes out your actions from existence. That's not freedom for anyone. And this opinion, according to people, makes me racist. I actually had one person ask me, so you think free will is worth it at any cost. And I said, you think free will is worth mankind's history of slavery? That's not what they asked. They asked specifically black slavery. And I said, well, let me put it to you this way. How far back do you go on slavery? Well, the very beginning, I said, well, then you have to go at least back to the Greeks, Romans, and the Egyptians, because they all practiced slavery. The Sumerians did it. You have to go back and change the entirety of human history, because that's when slavery started. It wasn't abolished until, it hasn't been abolished in practice because of human trafficking, but it's technically illegal in fairly recent memory. So you have to wipe out all of human condition. Well, African slavery then, because they actually said Jax was probably biased towards his own people. That's not racist, but I am. I said, all right, well, you have that opinion. I don't believe that you can remove the free will of every person on the planet to right one wrong. And it was very interesting for people to talk to me like I have no skin in the game when Passover just ended. Jews have our own story of slavery that we tell at this time every year. That's been the big irony about this, is that the enslavement of one people is being treated as uniquely awful. And all these other things are taking a back seat. But that's people accuse me of being tone deaf. That is the thing I miscalculated on. And I apologize for the pain it caused. I do not live in America. I do not live in this soup every day. I don't know this stuff, right? We can talk about this kind of thing in Canada without everything going completely fucking nuts. Indigenous issues are a different story. But there is a huge amount of palpable pain this camera angle's driving me crazy. There is a huge amount of palpable pain, especially in the US South. And people started going on about, police violence against being afraid every day, walking around their neighborhoods because they're a black person. And this is where I realized how deep the manipulation goes. Because the left likes to blame the right for things like Jim Crow, for the systemic inequities in America that have contributed to relatively high rates of black unemployment and poverty. But the truth is that one of the most racist bits of national policy in U.S. history was a liberal one. It was the New Deal. The big, greatest liberal achievement in the modern age, or the industrial age, certainly. And the left doesn't like talking about it. And so I noticed they sort of deflect to Jim Crow and slavery and leave out the New Deal. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has talked about this in her typically flamboyant fashion. I'm going to be a bit more detail-oriented. I'm going to be a bit more granular. According to some sources, I couldn't confirm this across the board, but according to some sources, black families had mostly caught up after slavery. And that wasn't easy because, as Martin Luther King famously referenced, and I know that's a cliche, hear me out. I'm not giving you a platitude here. I'm just citing the source. When Lincoln freed the slaves, he freed the slaves into nothing. No land, no jobs, because white people wouldn't buy goods from black people, So what exactly did Lincoln free the slaves into? And that critical question informed my thoughts about this whole Mortal Kombat thing. But through the sweat of their brow and, pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, Black Americans had mostly caught up. There was a slight discrepancy, but then the Depression hit and everybody fell into poverty. And the New Deal was the solution to that for white Americans. So it wasn't that Black people fell behind with the New Deal. It's that everyone was living in poverty, and the New Deal lifted white Americans out of poverty, but didn't lift Blacks out of poverty. And then it just added on and added on and added on, because the New Deal allowed union monopolies in workforces, which historically have been extremely biased against Black people. They resist hiring Black people, and when they do, they give them the crappiest jobs. There's a famous report from 1960 about the AFL, the largest union in America. I've covered this on my channel, engaging in systemic racism. The other thing the New Deal did is created maps for lending. The good risk areas that were lined in green, and then the bad risk areas that were lined in red. Well, if a neighborhood was a predominantly Black neighborhood, then they were redlined, hence the term. I don't think anybody can expect any people to have equality of opportunity with that 1-2 punch that just advantaged one race over another. And that had nothing to do with Jim Crow, which was its own monstrosity. It's weird because Jim Crow was like, you can't shake hands with a person of another race. You can't light a white woman's cigarette if you're Black. Like, horrible stuff, petty stuff, but horrible stuff. But, who cares if you can write a white woman's cigarette when you don't have a job? And the New Deal prevented a lot of Black enfranchisement. And of course, with voter suppression, Black people couldn't even be part of the system to change it. None of that has anything to do with the horrors of slavery. These were problems that cropped up. They caught up and they knocked them back again. And this is why I still maintain NetherRealm should not have included that ending. Because look at all the pain it's caused. We're not allowed to have opinions about a video game because it is so charged. And NetherRealm's an American company. They should have a much better awareness of this issue than a Canadian does. We can read, we can observe, we cannot emotionally relate in the same way. We have, our own issues, but it's not the same. As an American company, NetherRealm Studios should have known better, because you think we don't quite get it. Europe has no connection to this stuff. Like, this is not something shared around the world, this sensitivity. And if you want to call that tone deaf, fine. Like I said, I apologize. But this is precisely why an American company should not have included this ending in a game. It's caused people to just lose their minds and lash out and hurt each other. These things are supposed to be fun, not fights to the death. Pardon the pun. It's Mortal Kombat, I know, but it's supposed to stay in the game, not in the real world. Nothing is worth the trauma I have seen bubble to the surface over this. And I really realize this isn't about me. This is just me. Because a trigger can be anything. Something about saggy jeans triggered some people, and you can't expect me to know that. That's what the cool kids wore when I was growing up. I mean, I grew up in a majority Black neighborhood. I was just a nerd because I could never be that cool. Like, even then I understood, like, there's some things you just don't comment on. But I can't win on these issues because longtime viewers of this channel know that I have made it clear that I am very hesitant to comment on issues of race. And I was called cowardly for that position. So it's not that I can be safe. It's not that I'm not going to get criticized if I just stay out of this issue. Because people ask me to talk about certain things and I tell them like, look, no, I am not an expert on this. I am not weighing in. That's cowardly. And I heard it so many times. That's cowardly. That's cowardly. You're being a coward. We expect more from you. We want your opinions. And I'm like, all right, fine. I'll be brave. I don't regret it because I learned stuff. Not the lesson I think the people who think I'm racist want me to learn. What I've realized, and this is ironic based on, my opinion of what they did to Jax in that ending, turned him into Thanos. That was another thing people seem to not get, that potentially erasing every generation of a descendant of a slave while keeping your own wife and daughter is selfish as shit, and it's a Thanos move. Jax's own daughter, this is the whole disconnect, okay? Jax wanted to keep his daughter so much that he took multiple cracks at history after Raiden said, you may lose your daughter, you may lose your wife. I'm like, I'm going to do this as many times as it takes until I get my cake and eat it too. I'm going to keep my wife, I'm going to keep my daughter. And yet what happens in Jackie's ending? She chooses for her father that it is better to live without his daughter than to undergo the trauma of being a revenant because he meets her mother in therapy. Clearly, Jax, if that choice had been left up to Jax, would not have made that choice. He wanted to keep his daughter. So Jackie made a choice on behalf of her father, not consulting her father. And to Jax's mind, that was wrong. He clearly wanted to keep his baby girl. And that was one tiny decision made on behalf of someone else. And people claim they're not suffering. Sometimes in life, what hurts is not what was done to you or what you did. Sometimes what hurts in life is what you never got to do. And I think you ask most parents, they would say everything that happened to somebody, and I'm tearing up a little bit because I don't think I actually had parents that believe this, which is why I said almost any parent. Anything bad that happened to you was worth it for your kids. You live for your kids. Okay? I think a lot of parents would agree with that sentiment, but again, some wouldn't. But Jax was certainly a parent who did, and so Jackie made the wrong call. It was a selfless call. It was a noble call, but it was ultimately wrong. She should have asked her dad. And, obviously this pig-headedness is a Briggs family trait, but if Jackie got it so wrong on one decision, how many times did Jax get it wrong through 8 generations of fathers and daughters and mothers and sons and mothers and daughters and fathers and sons and all that stuff? How many people did he rob of that choice? The way Jackie robbed him of the choice to have her in his life. That's the problem. That's the problem. And because there is so much intergenerational trauma on this issue, that's getting lost. And what I realized is there are so many people out there hurting so badly that they cannot see that there are people in the world that care about them that much. And I suspect a lot of the people that were lashing out at me and pinning everything they're angry at on me, there are probably people who care about them a lot more than they realize. I don't know what the word is. Just the lack of hope, the lack of belief that them being on this world is an inherently good thing. Like, I asked a couple people, do you believe your life matters? Do you believe your life has inherent worth? And they didn't answer the question. That's... anyone with a shred of empathy can't help but feel an intense sorrow at that. Really marvel at the tragedy of that. And this is not specific to Black people. I know a lot of, we talk about mental health, we talk about struggles, things like that. There's a lot of people out there hurting that badly. And I just wish that pain could unify us and give us common cause instead of tearing us apart. And I know that people are going to go, oh, come on, that's not realistic. I know. I'm talking about what would be better for everyone, but I'm not saying I can do it. All I can do is spend hours and hours and hours for 4 straight days continually asking people, why do you think I'm a racist? Provide me proof of my racism, over and over and over and over again. And just because people didn't really have a good answer, because I feel that you are, is not evidence. And the assertion that I said something I did not in fact say on a video is not, it doesn't meet the burden of proof. But I don't have to, I can empathize with that pain without making it make me do the things it made them do. And I hope that if I have gotten through to anybody, please in future, do not allow con men, do not allow political operatives, because that's what the Young Turks are. They're political partisans, they're propagandists. They abandon and stretch the truth to try to get a predetermined outcome, which is apparently now the downfall of capitalism. Which is a little scary when you look at how much capitalism has benefited civil rights over the years. But I'm not saying capitalism's a magic bullet. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it's not all bad. I grew up in the 90s hearing about the pogroms against Russian Jews. The Uyghurs in China are very badly persecuted. These are socialist systems, folks. There's a really messy history with socialism and racism. But of course, the socialists don't want you to know that, because that doesn't serve their aims. And I made the video before. I made this video now because I listened to the people who have supported my channel for a really long time. And I decided to be brave, knowing that I was going to be painted as the villain in this piece. But you know what? Every good story needs a villain. And there's an old cliche that heroes can save the world, but villains can change it. Maybe being a villain in service of that is worth it. At least I'm prepared to accept that I am the villain in this piece. And I kind of wonder if I shouldn't do more of that. If I shouldn't just take the hits. Because civil rights, healing, reconciliation, reparations, if you will, are more important than any one person. Who cares if people hate my guts? Who cares if people think I'm a racist as long as this problem gets solved, right? Who cares? Seriously, who cares? I'm not that important. So that's where I'm going to leave it there. This is really awkward, but I have to do it. It's capitalism. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.